What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. And I'm here with my beautiful wife. Say hi, boo.
Hi everyone, I'm Akdi. I'm from Turkey, and today we're reviewing Rustin.
Yes, the 2023 biographical drama depicting the life of a great civil rights icon who actually goes underappreciated and unknown until Coleman Domingo decided to play him in a Netflix special. So we watched it last night, I think,
Yeah,
yeah, I really enjoyed it. How did you feel about it?
I really enjoyed it. First of all, I cried. Now, I don't know if that was because it was very effective, but I'm also about to have my period, so that might be the reason as well. But I really loved, all the performances in the movie. And I love the story. I didn't know about the, historical character of Bayard Rustin. And I didn't know that there was a person who, that I didn't know about who organized the march in Washington.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was I really liked it actually.
Yeah, for me as a Black American, there's still so many gaps in my knowledge about our history of fighting for civil rights, human rights, and all of the people that were involved in it. And I'm a product of Louisiana public education, so one of the most racist states, one of the most least educated states. In my history class, the way they talk about Black history, there was slavery, it was bad, we got rid of it. Then 100 years later, Martin Luther King gave a speech, said, I have a dream. And since then, racism has been solved. Like that's the way they teach it. And so, as I've gotten older and thanks to my parents as well, I've gotten a lot of education about, how we got free, how we're still fighting to get free and all of the icons and freedom fighters that we had. But I'm glad that this film was made to shed more light on somebody who I definitely was not taught about as a kid. And that's all I got to say.
Did you know about him beforehand?
Yes. And I feel like we've only really started hearing about Bayard Rustin recently, at least millennials. Like it wasn't until I would say like 2014, 2015 that a lot of millennials, I think, started hearing about him because, every few years on social media, somebody like digs up an old icon, from our past that didn't get a lot of shine and brings them to a new generation. Now, I'm not saying like nobody ever heard of Rustin, of course, but he's sort of been forgotten about or written out of history because he was a gay man. He was a gay Black man at a time when America was extremely homophobic, more homophobic than it is now, which it still is. So yeah, that's what I got to say about Rustin.
Yeah, it was definitely like a interesting, not maybe not interesting story. I mean, it was interesting, of course, but it was also very inspiring to see,
Mhm.
how everything kind of unfolded in the history books.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And let's break down who put this film together. So the film, of course, stars Coleman Domingo, and I believe this is the first time I've seen him in a leading role. Have you seen him in anything else where he's like the leading man?
Um, can we say Color Purple?
No, no. Like leading man has to be the movie is centered around his character.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So this is the first time we're seeing him as a leading man, though I'm sure he's done a lot of other work. This film was directed by a Black director. His name is George C. Wolfe, and he made a few other films. He made the TV movie about Henrietta Lacks. He also directed Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, a movie Acty and I saw before we started doing movie reviews that we both liked. Would you agree?
Yeah, I like that movie.
Yeah. And he was also an actor in The Devil Wears Prada. Did you know that?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah. And the guy who wrote the screenplay for this film is a white gay guy named Dustin Lance Black, and he wrote the screenplay for Milk, the film about Harvey Milk. Did you see that film?
Yeah, I did like many years ago, but I remember it was very good.
Hmm.
And it made me cry probably as well.
Yeah. Well, Dustin won a Oscar for writing the screenplay for Milk in 2009. And he's been, behind a lot of other movies and theater productions as well. So these are the people behind this movie, and generally, I can say that all of them have an agenda that does actually end up, being nailed. Right? They do the job of telling the story of this, you know, underwritten about, underexposed, underdocumented civil rights icon, and I feel like they do a good job of, displaying the struggles that he had being a gay man who was a former communist as a leading member of the civil rights movement, getting expelled from it, and then coming back to do organizing for the March on Washington. But what did you think about, them displaying the struggles that Rustin had in this film?
I think like what they did wasn't like extraordinary, but I think it suited like the story. I think, everyone did their job well in terms of like the screenplay, the acting, everything was like how it should be. And I just feel
Hmm.
like, reading some of the reviews and the stuff, people are just judgmental of it because it's a Netflix production.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
people automatically say like, oh, it's just like too cheesy and too Netflix and too like, common. And I think like it's okay sometime for some stories to be this way because the story is more important than cinematics of it and, the revolutionary filmmaking of it. So
right,
like for me, I like, cliche sometime.
right,
And I think
exactly.
this movie was able to handle that, especially with Coleman Domingo's performance.
Yeah, I feel like the people who hate on Netflix films are too deep into the hole and they're too obsessed with sucking their own dick to act like they're, cinemaphiles, that they know better than the pedestrians. The majority of people around the world watch Netflix films. Netflix would not be the biggest entertainment company in the world if they made crappy movies, right? Are Netflix films automatically what I go to? No. But I'm never going to say, oh, this Netflix film is just trash just because it's Netflix or shot in the style of Netflix. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, like I agree that Netflix might put up like bunch of shitty movies in
Hmm.
general because it's the thing, like they shoot a lot of movies. So
Hmm.
of course most of them are gonna be like not revolutionary or not like good, maybe even, but it doesn't mean every one of them is like that. And I think Rustin is one of the good ones.
Yeah, one of the good ones. Wow, that's kind of racist.
What? I'm talking about the movie.
Hey, Bayard, you're one of the good ones. Not like those other troublesome Negroes.
Oh my God, Simon. I was talking about the movie.
That was funny as hell. But yeah, this movie is like meant to be played like in a ninth grade history classroom when the teacher is sick and the gym teacher is substituting. So he's like, all right, now everybody be quiet. We're going to watch 45 minutes of this movie until you got to go to the next period. So either shut up or we're going to do some homework.
Do you think they would show it just because, like, in America, do you think they would show it just because Rustin is homosexual?
Oh, that's a good point. Oh, that's actually a very good point now because I feel like in my generation, right, they would show movies like this no problem, right? Civil rights icon, black men in suits, March on Washington, nonviolence. Yeah, white people would have loved to show this movie. But now, because we live in this new turned up transphobic, homophobic world, in America at least, I think this movie might actually get banned, right? And that's actually crazy because I feel like this is a good movie to show teenagers, young, kids. You get what I'm saying? Is there homosexual acts shown in this film? Yes, but it's not graphic. We don't see Rustin busting open a booty hole. You know what I mean? Spitting in it. You get what I'm saying? None of that happens.
Yeah, yeah.
But I feel like nowadays this film is more controversial than it would have been 15, 20 years ago. You get what I mean?
I don't know. Okay. Okay. And yeah, I get what you mean, of course. I think it would still be controversial before as well. But it's just that there's a lot of things that America is doing, like, towards the curriculum. And they try to make it very, um, like in a bubble
Hmm.
that they don't talk about, Black history. They don't talk about homosexuality. They ban like storybooks that talk about like two gay dolphins and shit like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so I don't know if this would be, I don't think this would be banned, but I don't think they would show it in certain schools.
Yeah, that's the thing. And by the way, when I say this film will be controversial, it would only be controversial to the conservative, MAGA, racist, homophobic nuts that we have in America now. It, like for certain, I am absolutely for sure. In Mississippi, if there was a children's book written about Bayard Rustin's life, it would be banned because you're promoting homosexuality to the kids.
Yeah.
You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
But I think that it would be shown in like university classes.
Right, right. A university class where everybody is like scrolling through IG pretending to pay attention.
Wow. Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a good movie, so it would be
yeah.
a shame.
Yeah. But let's walk through the story. So the movie opens up with text on the screen saying, like, it's 1953. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled segregation illegal, but America's still Americaing. And, and then it shows like images of like teenagers, doing a sit-in at a lunch counter and they're getting like ketchup poured on them by racist white folks. Young black girls being marched into school with U.S. National Guards protecting them, and you know black girls trying to go to university while racist Karens are like yelling into their face, spitting on their sunglasses and stuff like that. And so the next scene is like the civil rights leaders are sitting down with Martin Luther King and they're trying to convince him to march on the like 1960 Democratic National Convention. And Martin Luther King is like, hell no, I will not do such a thing. And then we're introduced to Bayard Rustin, who's played by Coleman Domingo, and he like gives like a fiery, very flamboyant, fabulous speech, darling, encouraging Martin Luther King by saying, "When I first heard you, Martin, you lifted up my spirits." And that sort of convinces Martin to say, maybe I'll do it. But then there's a phone call that goes out to the guy, A. Philip Randolph, right? Who I believe was the first black man to be elected to like, no, it wasn't A. Philip Randolph. It was, sorry, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Yes. A light-skinned, bougie black Negro who became like the first black man elected to the Senate or something like that, or Congress after Reconstruction. And he's like, who said these niggas could do this march without me? I better not let it happen. If this goes down, I'll tell the world about Martin Luther King's queen, and I'm not talking about his wife, implying that he was going to spread the rumor that Martin Luther King was having sex with Bayard Rustin. And, you know, Bayard Rustin and Martin Luther King, like, have, like, a good relationship. Like, they're at, you know, someplace eating lunch. They're catching up about old times. Obviously, their families are close. Martin Luther King's kids called Bayard, you know, Uncle Bayard, Uncle Rustin, whatever. But eventually, you know, Rustin is getting kicked out of the NAACP, because, you know, he's compromising the movement by being a gay man, and, you know, Adam Clayton Powell threatening to expose that information to possibly make Martin Luther King look bad. So yeah, what did you think about all of those opening scenes?
Yeah, I think like the introduction to Rustin, it was definitely started off like fiery. You know, you could see that he's someone who can have a good argument
Mm-hmm.
and he can like use his words right. And
Mm-hmm.
it also felt like, you know, because he was friends with, MLK, it felt like, you know, this guy might be behind some of the ideas or at least like some of the motivators for MLK and what he did as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was nice to see like that friendship between them. They were like out in a diner eating like stuff together and talking about families and things. And yeah, and then when that whole thing happened of you know, him being threatened, and he actually like was okay, I'm gonna bluff the NAACP and I'm gonna like give my resignation, but I know like my friend MLK won't take it.
Mm-hmm.
But then Martin like took it and he was like, thank you for your service, see you never. And that was like an asshole move because just because like they were friends and he knew that, you know, they were not lovers, and that was just like a very dirty rumor, but he just sort of went with it, like went with the decision that, Bayard would be bad to the movement because he's gay, which was
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about this film, and I can't think of any other civil rights 60s period piece that shows this. It shows like some of the civil rights leaders as kind of the enemy, like kind of assholes, kind of dickheadish, kind of, just like the white supremacists were trying to fight. They're gatekeeping certain things, relegating some people to the outside. You get what I'm saying? And I've never seen a film where on one hand they also make Martin Luther King seem sort of like a pussy, but also fuckable. You get what I'm saying? Like the Martin Luther King in this film, who's played by this British actor who's named Amil Amin, sorry. He's actually a decent looking man. Every other Martin Luther King film I've seen, that nigga's been pudgy, fat, unfuckable. And it made me think about my sixth grade teacher. I'll never forget, I had a sixth grade white English teacher who was teaching us about the civil rights movement, and she implied that she would fuck Martin Luther King. She said, he's so handsome, smart, educated, well spoken. I said, bitch, keep your panties on.
That's gross.
I'll never forget that. But this is the first handsome Martin Luther King, but asshole Martin Luther King. And yeah, the guy who plays Roy Wilkins is Chris Rock, right? And Chris Rock or Roy Wilkins, because it's hard to look at the screen and see Chris Rock and not see Chris Rock. You get what I'm saying? Uh,
Definitely.
but he's sort of like the one who is mostly giving the most pushback to Rustin throughout the film, right? And also Adam Clayton Powell Jr. So I wanted to ask you what's your opinion about this? Like, cause on one hand, we want people to look up to these guys. Like, for all his faults, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. is an icon, a hero. Roy Wilkins, hero. A. Philip Randolph, hero. Bayard Rustin, hero. Martin Luther King, hero. But they all have faults, right? So should these faults be shown on screen for people who might, say later, oh, the civil rights movement was just a bunch of bougie Negroes who hated other black people, or even worse, white supremacists who would say, see, look, even the Negroes can't get along. Or, should they show that to show that, no movement is perfect, no people are perfect? What do you think?
I think it should be shown like how it is in history. And like you said, these people are also people. They made mistakes. And I think also in this, throughout the movie, like all the hate towards Rustin came because he was gay. And that was justified because everyone was saying he's gonna harm the cause.
Yeah,
And that was like the reason why they kicked him out and things like that. Like
yeah,
they didn't refuse that he was a good man who was fighting for the cause, but they just said like, because you're gay, you're gonna, fuck up our plans.
yeah.
And I think like only speaking for this movie, at least everyone sort of made amends at the end. Sorry for like jumping ahead, but
Yeah, no, it's fine. Everybody knows how the civil rights movement ended.
yeah, like, the Powell and, Adam Clayton and Martin Luther King, everyone made like their amends with Bayard Rustin. And I think somewhat like understood why he was important and somewhat like understood that they could look away from him being gay.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it like highlights an important question. Like, if you're for one cause, like, are you gonna be still supporting other causes that are sort of included in your cause as well? Like
Yeah,
in this case, I don't know if that made sense, but
yeah. I
I
mean,
think a lot of like the civil rights movement leaders were straight men,
hmm,
and they were somewhat affected by the society telling black men to be like extra masculine.
well, straight presenting men, because as we'll see later, right? Some of these guys were on the down low.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's one of the big issues in the fight for black liberation in America is that there still is an unresolved homophobia within us to some degree. Now, I will never criticize black people. I love black people. We have no faults. But I do feel like because of the influence of religion and also this tendency to reclaim black masculinity, which was taken from us during slavery when they used to rape us, rape our wives right in front of us, cut off our limbs, sell us away from our families and all that sort of stuff. The black heterosexual cisgendered man, right, has been relegated to the state of a woman. There was a famous white supremacist who said the Negro is the woman of the races because he is good at art and communication, but he can never truly exercise power over other men the way white men can. You get what I'm
Mm,
saying? So
yeah.
because homosexuality is associated with submission, right? Because you're submitting willingly to the will of another man to penetrate you, right? It's seen as not naturally masculine. And even now to this day, right, we have this movement among some people who say, like, we can only get free to some degree by getting rid of all of these homosexual influences. The gay LGBTQ movement has no place in fighting for black liberation. This isn't the majority of opinion, but it is a strong minority. You get what
Mm,
I'm saying? And this film, you know, it, like you said, the characters sort of make peace with Rustin, but they never make peace with who he really is.
yeah.
They're glad he did something good,
Yeah,
but
they're
they're
just
not glad. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. They just find a way to overlook Rustin's identity.
Yeah, which is strange. But I'm glad the film, didn't harp on that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. I mean, of course you have to also take in consideration of the time.
Yeah.
Everything you said, black men trying to reclaim their manhood,
Hmm.
right? I'm sure it was like even more stronger that time
Hmm.
because it was closer to slavery in terms of like history and yeah, that at that time like no like within no race homosexuality was seen as a good thing or
Yeah.
as acceptable.
No.
So yeah, you have to take that into consideration as well.
Yeah, it's still the prevailing theme. And it's one of the faults of men, right? That we have enough time or enough energy to focus on picking on gay people when we never want to pick on the boss. We never want to pick on the white supremacists. We never want to pick on the landlords. We never want to pick on, the army, the police. We always want to pick on the bussy boys. Like, what the fuck? Like, come
Yeah.
on. So, sorry if I'm boring you by ranting, but
No, no.
So, but anyway, moving on in the story. So basically, Rustin gets kicked out of the NAACP. He ends up working for like the nuclear non-proliferation movement, like the office of like, motherfuckers against nuclear bombs or whatever. He's like the only black guy in the office. It's kind of boring, stale, nothing like something like that. Till one day he goes home and he gets a letter from an old friend who invites him to come out to a party. And so Bayard shows up and he's sort of like the old guy who graduated high school 15 years ago because now all the young black civil rights workers in there are like young and they're radical and they're talking about, I'm going to take my guns down south and face Whitey head on and stuff like that. And, in the kitchen, there's this black guy who said, I just came back from down south and the police beat my ass and stuff like that. And then another black civil rights guy is in there, and he's like, you know, man, I can't wait to beat up on Whitey or something like that. And there's a white guy there. I believe his name is Gus, right? Gus Harper, Gus Halper. He's played by Tom Kahn. No, Tom Kahn is played by Gus Halper. This is the thing, whatever. Tom Kahn was a famous white social democrat leader, whatever, back in the past, and Gus Halper is the guy who plays him, right? Anyway, Gus Harper almost gets his ass beat by like a proto Black Panther, but Bayard Rustin steps in to save his white zaddy, and he says, "You know what? I'm all about nonviolence, and you can't have nonviolence if you're not willing to take violence. Just make sure it's the right cheek, because a white cop in the 1940s already did the left." And he shows his teeth, and he's missing like two or three teeth on the left side of his face, and the black civil rights guy walks away. And then Bayard is like at home, chilling, minding his own business, when the gay guy, Gus, walks in. No, Tom walks in. And he's like, Bayard, why don't you want to get back involved in the movement, Bayard? And he's like, leave me alone and suck on Black Daddy's dick. And then later on, Bayard gets together with like some young civil rights people, and he starts brainstorming the March on Washington. What did you think about any of those scenes?
Yeah, going to like okay, first of all, like how his life ended up becoming, like this boring sort of desk job that he didn't really feel that compassionate about. Like, it was sad to see that, obviously. And, in the party, I think like, I really like that in reality also, like Bayard is a pacifist. Like he's a
Mm-hmm.
passive resistance fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like pacifists today get a bad rep, but I'm a pacifist too, I would say, to an extent, because I think pacifism shows how much you can change with your mind and your resistance, without using any physicality. Because
Mm-hmm.
I believe using physicality, using force, using violence is only temporary, and it could only get you what you want temporary. And most of the time it doesn't get you what you want because it makes you wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, when you're passive, but you use your wit, your patience, your emotional strength, I think it changes a lot more and it makes a longer effect.
Right.
So I liked the fact that, he was that, and then he was also standing on it very strongly throughout the movie.
Yeah, he was standing on business, and
Yeah,
he walked it like he talked it. Right. I think
exactly.
I think the civil rights movement and their focus on pacifism was very important and revolutionary, right? But I think the way we got free or ended legal segregation in America was a mix of pacifism and also violent resistance, right? Because while there were the civil rights marches where we got beat up by police and sicked on by dogs and stuff like that, there were also the riots, right? There was the Watts riots and so many other times where we actively fought back against the type of legal discrimination in the U.S., right? Then there was also the legal front. So we had our lawyers, we had our nonviolent protesters, then we also had our writers. So it was a mix of a lot of different things. But obviously, like the most important part and the most iconic part is the non-resistance aspect of the civil rights movement.
Yeah, definitely. And like thinking about it also back then, the passive resistance was, I guess, more effective because there was no social media. So
Mm-hmm.
people still had to like get up and do the work.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, like it's easy to be a pacifist because you just like share posts online.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, but I think it's much more than that. And that's why I think because of social media, like pacifists or passive resistance, fighters get a bad rep.
Yeah.
And, also like, when that other guy who was trying to fight, um, Roy? No, not Roy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you get what I mean. The other guy, when he was trying to fight, he told, Bayard that, he left MLK when
Mm-hmm.
he didn't get what he wanted. So it kind of like showed me that everyone around MLK and everyone who supports, that party, sort of saw Bayard as the enemy, like as a
Yeah.
betrayer, as a traitor.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
actually, like he didn't do anything like that.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. But moving on in the film, did you have any comments about the brainstorming scene when Bayard was with all the young people and they were writing on the wall saying that they were going to have a 2-day event and have tents and surround the White House and all of that stuff? Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, it was cool to see like how, the idea came alive. And it was also nice to see, Rustin like being this, very active leader,
Hmm.
sort of knowing about the marketing of it and how, stuff will get organized. He was thinking about everything. That was
Yeah.
cool.
I thought it was interesting that the original idea for the March on Washington was supposed to be 2 days and people were supposed to sleep there. Because the way that we're sort of taught about the March on Washington, it's like Martin Luther King just started walking to Washington, and like Jesus, everybody just started following him until it was like 1 million people. And then he walked up to a microphone and said, "Guess what, everybody? I'm going to solve racism. Watch this. I have a dream." And the crowd goes crazy, right? Like, But I didn't know that they planned for something actually a bit more radical. 100,000 people, 100,000 black people non-violently swarming on Washington, and then they're going to sleep there. Then the next day surround the White House and just start singing and chanting. Like, I, like how different do you think the civil rights movement, that iconic day, would have been had it been 2 days?
Oh God, I don't know. I think if it was 2 days, it might have gotten violent, just because there were so many like people against it being 2 days, and also so many people against being, you know, the march, having the march there. So I don't know. Maybe the white police might have attacked some people,
Yeah.
and things might have gotten bad. But also, like the first day had such a good effect on everyone that it was so peaceful that maybe it wouldn't have been that way as well. I don't
Yeah.
know. So but even like one day, affected the course of the history.
Yeah, I think if they did have the tents and they slept on the Washington Mall, a lot of booties would have got clapped. Come on now. You got baddies coming from Florida, from South Carolina. It'd have been like Freaknik on the Washington Mall. All these young niggas got, damn, we got white hoes, we got black hoes. Oh, there's some Indian hoes here. And booties would have got clapped. Civil rights babies would have been born. It would have been crazy. It would have been absolutely crazy. Them tents would have been rocking. The Washington Monument would be swaying back and forth. That shit would have been lit.
Wow.
It would be the original Freaknik. We would have turned that bitch up for real.
That's crazy. Like you go to the Washington Square and all you hear is like, but just collective sound, like that times 1,000.
I'm gonna cream.
That's insane. But
Yes.
yeah, that would have happened.
Yes, a lot of booties would have got claps on the Washington Monument. Anyway, moving forward. So basically, Bayard, he meets up with the OG, A. Philip Randolph, big dog in American civil rights history. And A. Philip Randolph is actually sort of like supportive of Bayard Rustin. He wants to get behind him and he wants to involve like the unions and stuff like that. To get them all on board, right? To make it more than just about civil rights. It's about economic opportunity. So they go to the NAACP and Roy Wilkins is like, hell no. Hell no. Like, we're not with it. Like, what happened before when people started marching on Washington? The white supremacists, the government literally sicked soldiers and tanks on white soldiers coming back from World War One who were asking for jobs and opportunity and stuff like that. There were some other people at the meeting who were supportive, like Medgar Evers and stuff like that, but they're like the minority. And Roy Wilkins tells A. Philip Randolph, the guy who was such a civil rights icon that he got the national forces, the armed forces, to desegregate, right? Like this man is responsible for breaking one of the big barriers in American life, like stopping the army from having white ranks and black ranks. Roy Wilkins tells him no, right? And so, yeah, uh, A. Philip Randolph at the end of the meeting says, well, since the NAACP said no, why don't you talk to your friend Martin Luther King? And that starts a whole new chain of events. What did you think about that, if anything?
I thought like what I was guessing in terms of like history that, you know, NAACP and like the whole movement of civil rights, it was starting to gain momentum at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a talk about it. So I felt like all the people who were involved in it were like just super cautious
Mm-hmm.
because they just wanted this thing to go through, and they were like trying to reason with white men
Mm-hmm.
and get this thing through so they could have the freedom that they wanted. They could have the rights that they wanted.
Right.
So I felt like everyone was trying to be like extremely, just according to the law. And no one wanted any like riots and things like that.
Yeah.
And they were just trying to get the legality right. And
Right.
that's why they were acting the way they were acting. Not
Yeah.
that they didn't support the cause, but they were just like they had to play by the white dudes.
Yeah, yeah. That's sort of like the interesting thing about, when you think about how we got free or how we're fighting for our freedom, we have to always calculate about what the white supremacists will do. We know they are prone to violence and they are prone to not playing fair and cheating. and they can commit mass atrocities and not care about it. You get what I'm saying? So like the civil rights leaders are like, yeah, we could march on Washington, but we could also not have 100,000 black people get shot down by the National Guard on live TV. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the NAACP, like you said, they're playing it cautious, but because this is the film where you're rooting for Rustin, and also you know that the March on Washington will happen regardless, you're like, damn, they almost got in the way of stopping one of the most major civil rights events in history. You get what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so you're looking at these people like kind of side eye, you know?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, I remember when this scene ended, I said, fuck Chris Rock.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But that's the good thing about this film because you didn't say fuck Roy Wilkins, which would have got you slapped.
I mean, I didn't know, I didn't remember the character's name. So I
Yeah.
just went like, somebody should slap him again.
Let's talk about that because while we're watching this film and while we have been reviewing it, I've slipped up and said Coleman Domingo did this or Chris Rock did this when actually I'm talking about the characters, right? Like some people who hated on this film because we were reading the reviews on Letterboxd said like this film goes into like uncanny valley weirdness because the stars are so big on screen. You're forgetting that this is the story of civil rights icons whose names should be bigger than the stars. You get what I'm saying? Like, what do you
Mhm.
think about that? Do you feel like the stars and the faces here overpower the characters?
I mean, obviously, you know, like that's Coleman Domingo and you know that's Chris Rock. And there is that moment where you're trying to like separate them in your head
But we
or
don't know
not,
that's Jeffrey Wright. We do not know that's Jeffrey Wright because Jeffrey Wright
yeah.
looks totally different than he did in American Fiction. Like they gave him a hairpiece, a fresh lineup. Adam Clayton Powell was something else. But anyway, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, definitely. But you're trying, I think, because you know these people and they are so famous, you try to merge them with the characters for a second. But first, when you see them, you're taken aback because, yeah, like you know these characters, you know every other role that they played, especially with Chris Rock because he's like a, funny guy. So
Yeah,
it's hard to like merge him with this serious role, at least in my head
yeah,
because I've known him as a comedian.
yeah.
And I think it doesn't take away from the movie because I think you said something like, this movie could have been shot with people that we didn't know,
Mhm.
but I think it wouldn't have been this big if it was shot with people that we didn't know. And I think it's an important story to know.
Yeah. The thing is, like you said, they could have shot this with people that we wouldn't know, and we would then associate those people with the faces. That's Roy Wilkins. That's A. Philip Randolph. Blah 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 blah. Right. But I like seeing very famous black men who could be doing other roles. They could be doing like the next Marvel movie, the next DC mega big blockbuster, whatever. But I like that they're taking time out of their lives to honor our civil rights icons. So I'm glad Chris Rock is in it. I'm glad Coleman's in it. I'm glad Jeffrey Wright is in it and other, A-list black actors are in it, holding it down and giving excellent performances.
Hmm. Definitely. And I think it reaches more people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see the problem with that because also for them as actors, like, are they only supposed to play the roles that you would expect them to play?
Right.
Like, no, they might want to play serious roles and things like that. So
Right.
I don't think there's a fault in it.
Yeah. I'm sick and tired of seeing Coleman Domingo straight passing. Let this man be flamboyant, free, and gay. Let him
Yeah.
be.
I'm sure when he got the script, he was like just twerking all around the room, happy that I think he knew that this role could be something he can capture so well because
Yes.
it's so like in line with his own, character in life.
He's like, yes, I can finally kiss a nigga on screen. Yes. Speaking of kissing, right? So after the meeting with the NAACP, Bayard, goes to the bathroom and takes a piss, and then he meets with Elias. Elias Taylor is played by John Ramey, and he is a preacher who just married a girl whose father has like a big church in New York City or something like that. And so he's trying to be a part of the civil rights movement and also take over his wife's church. But in the bathroom, when he's having a conversation next to Bayard Rustin in a urinal, standing right next to each other, he glances down, looks at Bayard's Vic, and says, "Hey, what's up?" And they leave the bathroom, and then Bayard meets Elias's wife, and she's like, "Oh, Bayard, it's so nice to see you again. I heard you speak, and you lifted up my spirits and stuff like that, right?" And then Elias acts like he didn't know Bayard or whatever, and the guy Tom Kahn, who is Bayard's like bussy boy, his boyfriend, his fuck toy, his boy toy, whatever, is looking all jealously off in the corner as Bayard and Elias flirt. Bayard and Elias then go to a bar, and eventually they talk about how both of them were in the closet and gay. But Bayard's grandmother was sort of like, supportive of him wanting to kiss boys or dance with boys. Meanwhile, Elias was sort of like forced into the closet because he came from this Christian background and stuff like that. Later on, they leave the bar, and Bayard and Elias like have a kiss, and then Elias shimmies his shoulders and says, "I'll see you later," and then walks away into the dark, and Bayard is left with blue balls. What did you think about those scenes?
Yeah, it was interesting. They included like his sort of personal life and how like if he had a lover and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I found it interesting that Elias, he actually like disagreed with Rustin in the meeting. And then later in the bathroom, he said he supported him. So I thought that was like Elias trying to seem straight, I guess. And yeah, and then he reveals, he supports Rustin and things like that. And when they sort of got like flirty, I was like, oh, okay, like there's something that's gonna happen here. And and also in their talk at the bar, it's always interesting, like gay people can be or also are religious as well. And Rustin asked Elias, like, do you really want to be a preacher? Do you really want to do this work? And Elias says, yes. Like, I love God and I want to do this. But it's like, it felt like he wishes, like, I wish I can do this as a gay preacher. Not having to hide my identity, but like, obviously I can't.
Yeah.
Which was sad. And I feel like that's a lot of the times, situation in this type of situations.
Yeah, exactly. He tries to, tell Elias, when Martin Luther King speaks, he holds nothing back, right? So maybe you should try to do the same. And, how can you preach salvation when you don't want to save yourself? And Elias is like, I just can't do it. I just can't do that. I can't go that far, which is understandable. Like this part of the film is like traditional, like, in the closet, can't come out because of society and so many other factors, blah, 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 blah. One thing I want to point out about this scene is that they start bringing it up at this part of the film and throughout that Bayard was a Quaker. Now, I don't know if you know what Quakers are, but they're like a denomination of Christianity that was originally like very, very conservative. Like they rejected technology and living with modernity and stuff like that. And they read the Bible very strictly, but they were also like abolitionists for slavery. And some of the Quakers fought against slavery before the Civil War even started. And it's very unusual for a black person in America to be a Quaker. Most black Americans are Baptist Christians, which I think Elias was as well. But I think, Bayard had many layers that made him different than other people in the civil rights movement. And it's something that I think a lot of people can identify with today because so many people have intersections of their identity that might make them seem like, oh, you're not really black because you're like this or that or something like that, right? But Bayard was one of those guys living that at the time. He was not a Baptist. He was not heterosexual. He was a communist. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I did not know what a Quaker was.
Mm-hmm.
But from how they reacted in the movie, I just assume it was very, very like a religious society, basically.
Like Quakers are also about like anti-violence, right? They're pacifistic. So, they've always rejected going to war, but they're very much against slavery. You get what I'm saying? If I remember right, John Brown was a Quaker. You remember
Mm.
John Brown?
Yeah, I do. I
Yeah,
mean, they sound dope. You know,
yeah.
they sound like the best Christians I've heard about.
A
Sorry.
little. Yeah, but it's very uncommon. And I can sort of relate to Bayard because my mom is Catholic, my dad is Presbyterian, and the majority of most black Americans are Baptists, which is neither one of those, right? So
Mm,
I can feel him on that part. How his religion probably influenced him and how he viewed the world, and also his relation to people in his world.
mm. Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to see like how different, sections of Christianity intersect with each other in America. Because I feel like even though Turkey is a very religious country, and yeah, we have like Shia and then we have Sunni, which are like two different Muslims, right?
Yeah.
I feel like most of the time it's never voiced.
Yeah. Well, moving on from that part, basically, Bayard is in the office of the anti-war, anti-nuclear bomb, stuffy white man society, right? And he's looking on TV, and he's seeing images coming out of Alabama of the police spraying black protesters with like water hoses and sicking dogs on them and beating them with batons. And one of his white coworkers sitting at the desk says, "Can you believe Martin Luther King sending those kids down there to die?" And Bayard just turns up. He's like, "You're watching kids get beat up by police with water hoses and batons, and you're saying, how dare Martin Luther King cause this to happen?" And then his white boss comes in here and says, "Bayard, you're attacking him for the color of his skin." And Bayard says, "No, I'm not attacking him for the color of his skin. I'm attacking him because he's ignorant. And if he just so happens to be white, well, that's between him and God." And then his boss goes off on him and says, "Bayard, you have unresolved trauma because your family left you, and right now you have become a homosexual to hurt them and yourself. And until you get over this anger, you will always, always be at the bottom." Stuff like that, right? And then Bayard gives the sassiest performance. He says, "Have you ever been to a Negro church?" And Mr. Musty, his boss, says, "Innumerable times." And he says, "Growing up as a Quaker, I had never seen nothing like a true Negro church, singing, hollering, clapping. Now, I looked at that as exalted rage. And right now, before I do anything, I'm gonna, woo, step out of here before I do anything crazy." I think that was one of the best scenes, like how he like stomped, clapped in this white man's face, and then dropped the mic on his ass. That was hella
Yeah,
fun. But
that
what did
was
you think of
so
that
good.
conversation?
That was so good. He said, "I'm going to shut up right now and go to church on Sunday."
I'm a,
That was so good. So good. Yeah. And like, again, we see, Coleman Domingo just embodying himself.
yeah,
But yeah, that was, that showed like, for me, he was standing up like to a white supremacist idea. Not
yeah,
that like that guy was racist, but he had these white supremacist ideas, and he said, and he thought of things like in a twisted way. When the only person who you should like blame at that point is, the white police who's beating up those kids, and also politicians who give those orders. And he was standing up for that. But then, as he was arguing with his boss, the only argument that was given to him was that he's a homosexual.
mm,
Which sucks because it has nothing to do with him being homosexual about like the conversation. They're talking about racism. They're talking about police brutality. Of course he's going to be angry, but why would you put that on like, oh, you're angry because you're homosexual?
mm-hmm,
So that was really like, unfair for that to be thrown at him all the time
mm,
whenever people, felt like they couldn't answer him.
yeah.
So yeah.
I thought it was interesting, like how he's working at probably this very liberal, very progressive organization, but homophobia is in there too, right? Because his boss still believes that homosexuality is a choice, and it's a negative choice, and it's a negative choice you make when really you're just mad and angry at the world. So I thought that was very interesting. And the second thing is like, it's funny how the language doesn't change. Like just this morning, I woke up to a comment on my YouTube section saying, because you went to Albania, you deserved all the racism that happened to you. Or you look for trouble, meaning when people call you the N-word or say F you N-word, you deserve it. You get what I'm saying? Because just you exist, right? And it's so crazy that that sort of sentiment has not changed, right? People view anything negative that happens to black people as somehow our fault when when the negative action is started by the people who are doing the worst things. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, so that was like very touching for me. And
Mm.
it's something that really disturbs me because even though we've made progress, quote unquote, there still has not been change in mentality. People still hate black people. People still say that, racism doesn't exist for us, or we need to get over it, or we need to stop fighting about it, or talking about it, or complaining about it. Because when we do, their reaction is to say, you deserve it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like, you had it coming, you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done that.
Right,
But it's
exactly.
like, if other people can do it, if white people can go wherever they want without getting hate, why can't you?
Right. Or
And
white
why
people
would
can
that be
fight
your
for
fault?
right. White people can fight for their freedom because in their history they fought against their kings, they fought against their oppressors, and nobody says, "Damn, the person Joan of Arc deserved to get her head cut off. She deserved to get burned at the stake." Right? So why did she decide to go and fight for her freedom? Why did, the leaders of the Revolutionary War of America try to fight for their freedom, quote unquote, right? They deserve to get shot. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So it was very interesting. I really liked that scene. That was cool. Anyway, Bayard goes home after watching the issue happen on screen where the kids were getting hosed down at work. And then he sees John F. Kennedy on TV saying that, what we saw earlier was horrific and wrong and racism has no place in America. And then his, black girlfriend, right? I don't know exactly who the character was, but
Ella Baker.
oh, that was Ella Baker. Okay, shout out Ella Baker. Legend, big dog. Ella Baker has like one of the best lines in the entire movie because Rustin doesn't want to, hook back up with Martin Luther King because he's still mad that Martin Luther King sort of let him get kicked out of the NAACP. But Ella Baker tells him, we get up every day and forgive this country that hates us, but you can't forgive the best person that ever walked the face of the fucking earth, Martin Luther King. I just thought that was funny as hell. It was kind of funny how she said it. You can't forgive your friend, Martin Luther Jesus Christ III.
Wow.
But yeah, so the sassy black friend eventually does, what she has to do in the movie, which is convince the hero to, do the right thing. And so Bayard Rustin ends up going to wherever Martin Luther King lives in like the perfect black suburb in Atlanta. And Coretta Scott King answers the door and all the kids say, Uncle Bayard, Uncle Bayard. And he's like, hey kids. And he's in the kitchen. He's got Coretta singing this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. And then all the kids are marching around the house singing with Uncle Bayard. And then Martin Luther King comes home and says, boy, what you doing in my house? But anyway,
He does
what
not say that.
I'm changing up the movie a bit. This is the Simon remix of
Wow.
Bayard. Anyway, what do you think about any of those scenes?
Yeah. About his talk with Ella Baker, I also
Mm-hmm.
thought that line was really good because she also said something along the lines of like, we forgive America and we show that by like still trying to make peace with, white supremacists in America, basically. We still try to like make things right. And, that's like a marriage. That's what I thought because like, for example, when we fight, we try to make things right between us, right? We
Mm-hmm.
try to like, we approach each other, we try to talk it out and things like that. And black people do that to America every day.
Right.
And while America like attacks them, at least during that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a really like, a good point to
Mm-hmm.
point out.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and when it comes to like Rustin going back to Martin's house. Yeah, it seemed like they were really good friends and it was just like a matter of time that they would come back together, really,
Yeah.
as friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there wasn't any animosity or argument between them. It seemed like they missed each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like very natural.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, in this film, they kind of make Martin Luther King seem like a pussy. Like, kind of seem like the guy that has to be pushed over the edge. Because Bayard has to sit down with Martin Luther King, and after they say, "I missed you, old friend. I missed you too, boo. I mean, friend." They start talking about like what the plans are. And, Martin Luther King is like, the Southern Dixiecrats are going to like try to block the civil rights bill that's coming up. Kennedy's going to sign it, but we got to push him over the edge, blah, blah, blah. And Bayard is like pitching him the idea about the, March on Washington, right? And, it takes some convincing, but Bayard is able to do it. So then the next day, Martin Luther King goes on TV and announces that he's a part of the civil rights movement. And, he's down. And that pisses off the NAACP. Roy Wilkins marches into the office all mad, doesn't even say hi to Bayard Rustin, who's sitting outside. And then Bayard meets up with this happy-go-lucky rich Jamaican man who wants to be a part of the movement. I forgot his name. Do you remember?
No.
No? Anyway, this happy-go-lucky, very radical
Cleveland Robin.
Cleveland Robbins, who is like, I guess the spirit animal for Marcus Garvey in this film. He comes in talking about the black race will be free, like Mandela or something like that. And, he goes in with Bayard to pitch the idea for the March on Washington. And Roy Wilkins is like, hell no. He kicks everybody out of the office. But, they decide to eventually go ahead and do it regardless, right? They sort of force Roy Wilkins' hand that this will get done one way or not. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this part of the movie was like giving Martin a second chance to be a good friend and do the right thing this time, and he did it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, this is the part of the film where I was like getting my hopes up. I'm thinking like, yay, it's gonna be great. We're gonna
Mm-hmm.
march.
Yeah.
And, and it did sound like a crazy plan too, because they were talking like, oh, we should like plan this march in a year or something, because it's such a big plan.
Right.
And they want like 100,000 people, and everyone is like, that's crazy. We can't have that many people. And, but it was like, Martin was standing on it. He was like, the reason why we need to have this march early, like in a couple of weeks, I think it was like 8 weeks or something to plan, is because like we need to get this, Civil Rights Act in place. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's important and things like that. And it was such a crazy plan, but it was so like exciting.
Yeah. 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 It was interesting because at the meeting, Roy Wilkins basically lays it out to everybody who's left in the room, to like Roy Lewis and James Farmer and everybody, saying like, listen, y'all are going to go into business with a known bussy bandit, known ex-communist. Everybody here is going to be under fire because we're associating with him. And the movie nails it home even more so at that point that, Rustin's existence is dangerous. It's toxic to the movement. And they did take a major risk even associating with him being on the board. So they sort of like compromised by actually kicking Rustin off the board. But Philip A. Randolph does a maneuver and says, yeah, you're technically off as the deputy, but you're my assistant deputy, and I've given you all the power to put together this event. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool.
I mean, yeah, he tricks the system.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, it makes the NAACP kind of the villain in a film. I haven't seen a movie where, the NAACP is sort of like the old principal that you want to see, like get their house TP'd and egged. You know what I mean?
I mean,
like,
yeah, like we said in the beginning, they are very cautious, very traditional.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, moving on, Bayard brings all of his young associates together at this old dilapidated office, and he's like, we don't have a lot, but we'll make it fabulous. So come on, girls, let's do what needs to be done. And so like he's like showing them like this old broom that's basically falling apart. And he says, "You guys clean this up by the time I get back from Washington, honey, because I got to talk to the president." And so Bayard goes to Washington and meets up with the what's supposed to be the leaders from the National Park Service to organize the march or get the official permits, because the Washington Monument is technically a part of the, National Park Service. But instead, he's met by the police, and the police are giving him a hard ass time. And Rustin is like, we want this to be a 2-day event. The police tell him it's going to be 1 day, only that. And we're going to have a bunch of cops out here, and we don't want no trouble from you protesters. And,
Wow.
they essentially like walk away. And Bayard is kind of like dejected. He calls Martin Luther King in the phone and tries to like, put together like a plan B or something like that and compromise. But I don't know. What did you think about any of those scenes?
The renting the space for the, organization and the planning. And I like the fact that, there's a lady there. Yeah. Dr. Anna
Mm-hmm.
who's played by CCH Pounder. And,
Well, that's a
she's,
porn name. CCH Pound Her. Yeah. Okay.
wow. Anyway, I liked her character a lot because I feel like it showed the age-old alliance between feminists and gays.
Wow.
Because there is an alliance there. And, it was like that. And I really liked their dynamic because also Rustin respected her as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "This lady needs no introduction." And,
Yes.
that was cool. And it was nice to see, every young person who wanted to make America right, like just working together, and also like sort of scary for them, to organize this huge thing, but they all had ambition. So that was good. And about like the meeting with the police chief, I guess, the army chief. It was disappointing like that he wasn't taken serious, but at this point we were expecting that, right? And also I think there it shows that Rustin was a good argumentative person. And he did like, he kept his cool, and he was like so smart with his words and reasonings.
Yeah.
And they showed that really well in the movie, not only in this scene, but in couple of other scenes as well. Like he knows he's fighting for the right cause, so he's not afraid to say things that will get him there.
Yeah, exactly. That interaction with the cop was kind of triggering for me, because like the cop was saying like all the same talking points that white people or anti-black racists say today. Like whenever you debate them or talk to them, they'll say like, "Why are you getting emotional? Why are you yelling at me? Why are you frustrated?" And it's because you're saying frustrating, evil shit right here. So of course I'm gonna get turned up. But it's only when you're actually beating them in the debate that they actually then say all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, even though, like you said, Rustin was quick with his words and witty, the cop just threw that out there like, "Because you're yelling at me." And Rustin had to reply, "I'm not yelling at you," which obviously devolves the conversation into nothingness. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that was annoying. But moving on from that, Rustin is sort of like dejected that, the police are giving him a hard time. He goes home and he's getting like phone calls where nobody answers. So it's sort of like alluding to him getting death threats. He's listening to Mahalia Jackson, and he says, "I feel so alive" when Mahalia's in the room and stuff like that, right? And then Tom comes in, and they have a moment. Sort of like throughout the film, there's like this tension between Tom and Rustin, because like Tom wants to, I guess, be loved by Rustin, but Rustin is sort of like just not wanting to be committed that way. You get what I'm saying? I was kind of like not taken out of the movie because of the Tom, Elias, Rustin love triangle, but it felt like for me, Tom was coming on much harder to Rustin than was deserved. Like, of course, maybe they fooled around a bit, but I didn't get the feeling like there was a full relationship and Rustin made a commitment to him, and therefore Tom had a right to feel dejected. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I don't know like if this is true or not, but I guess during that time, because like being gay is illegal,
Mhm.
um, there wasn't like that established relationship within gay people,
No,
maybe.
I think there were obviously gay men who clandestinely had full on relationships like straight people, but I felt
Yeah,
like I felt like Tom and Rustin, they might have had a thing or a fling, but it didn't feel like it warranted Tom being like, I'm so jealous. You know what I mean?
yeah. I think for me, it felt like Tom gave so much energy to Rustin. He was working for him like as a secretary, and then he was also like his fuckboy, right?
Hmm.
So I felt like he was just he felt bad that he didn't receive that thing back,
Hmm.
that affection back, because I guess Tom saw Rustin as sort of like a hero,
Hmm.
and he just didn't reciprocate that.
Yeah.
And
But if that's
yeah,
the case, does that make Rustin a bad boss? How is he no different than like the 80-year-old guy sleeping with the secretary? And then the secretary is like, you said you would leave her for me.
wow. I mean, I guess I don't know. Like, I don't think they had sexual relationship after the movement started. But then again, we don't know. They just didn't show it on the screen.
No, there was a scene when, at the beginning, Rustin lays up in bed and then Tom comes from behind and holds him and they have their shirt off.
Yeah, that was before Tom started working for Rustin, though.
But they were working together before. They had known each other before.
Yeah, they had known each other. They weren't working for each other.
Mm.
But yeah, maybe he's also an abusive boss. I don't know. But I would like to think not, because it was consensual,
Hmm.
and I don't think there was like any sort of toxic behavior from Rustin's side, because
Yeah.
like you said, they weren't official.
Yeah. Yeah, I got you. I got you. But either way, there's this middle part of the film where things are kind of like dangerous for Rustin. Like he's going outside, getting followed and stuff like that. Going on, like the movement is still continuing and Rustin meets up with all these civil rights icons at his office where he's organizing the march, and they're still not sure if the numbers are going to be right and stuff like that, or if they're going to be able to actually do the march with 100,000 people. But uh, the major concern is that the 2 day march doesn't seem likely or feasible. Like the leaders are like, we're going to fight against the power that be and then take on the White House. That's way too much. That's way too dangerous. Logistically, it doesn't make sense. And Rustin doesn't want to give up on this idea. But it takes like John Lewis and I think Martin Luther King to sort of like convince Bayard that something is better than nothing. And so then he has to go to his young subordinates and say, basically, children, the march will only be 1 day. Right? And so the house of Rustin has an uproar. All the children are basically trying to overthrow their mother. But Rustin says, calm down, you wenches. We will still get this done. Now get back to printing flyers. And yeah, that's essentially how it goes. What did you think about that?
Yeah, there were a lot of critiques about like this movie being one dimensional and on the surface and not showing Rustin's life in detail.
Hmm.
But for me, as someone who didn't know Rustin, I feel like I got a lot of parts of his life. Like they
Hmm.
showed his strength, they showed his weaknesses, they showed how he was threatened by the FBI possibly.
Hmm.
They showed his love trouble,
Hmm.
and also like obviously his passion for the movement and his failures, his wins, his losses. So I feel
Hmm.
like they did a good job showing different parts of Rustin's life.
Yeah.
And like maybe those people on Letterboxd specifically, they say that because maybe they wanted more attention to his life or character as a homosexual.
Hmm.
And the homosexual part of him in this movie is very cliche. He falls in love with a closeted guy, and he also has sex with a guy. And yeah, that's basically kind of it. But I feel like overall they did a good job of showing different things that he went through.
I think this film would have been more interesting for the gay aspect of his life, showing him having a non-sexual relationship with another prominent black, openly gay figure, James Baldwin. James Baldwin's absence in this film, I feel like, is so unfair for us in the audience to get like a masterful performance showing that, there were other gay men who could be around Rustin, and it's not related to sex or romance or anything like that. Plus, also showing another side of the civil rights movement as well. James Baldwin missing in this film is a big problem for me.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. Like, I didn't know that they knew each other, but you told me that this morning. And I thought, like, okay, so if Ella Baker is there, if, Mahalia Jackson is there, then so could have, James Baldwin.
Yeah, and they could have had a great kiki session, over Manhattan martinis, whatever. It would have been
Wow.
great. It would have been fabulous, darling, fabulous.
It would have been just absolutely two queens.
Two queens, two queens. But I kind of didn't like how when the scene came when he has to tell the kids, we can't have a 2-day march, and they're all like, "Aw," you know, and they're like, "You made us write on the board. We wrote it on the whiteboard, Mr. Rustin," and he's like, "Shut up!" Like that's just sort of over. Like they got upset at him for like 2 seconds, and then they're like back out in the fields, like whatever, canvassing, passing out flyers, giving speeches to all white lady book clubs. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, but what can they do? They also know Rustin wants this more than them,
hmm
possibly. Like, this guy was crazy about the whole event.
yeah,
But it was also like, there was the argument that if we make this a 1-day event,
hmm
then more people would come because
hmm
people don't have to, like, stay at the tents. So,
yeah,
yeah, it would be like more crowded and things like that. So, yeah, like they just had to go with that. They had to take whatever they can.
yeah, yeah, exactly,
And
exactly.
also, like, not to just miss it, when they were showing, like, all the people
hmm
who, like, all the, girls, young girls and young boys trying to pursue people to come and stuff like that, they were also, like, concerts, too. You remember
hmm
that part that they show, like, who
Yeah,
performed at the concerts?
yeah, yeah. And Tony Bennett was there.
Yeah. Tony
Fly me to
Bennett.
the moon, let me play amongst the stars. Okay, Tony. Tony was out there marching with Martin Luther King.
Wait, who's Little Stevie Wonder?
I think that's what Stevie Wonder's original name. He used to go by Lil Stevie Wonder, like Lil Wayne.
Oh. Okay, that's why they put him, because they showed him singing when they
Yeah.
were showing the thing.
Wow. Stevie Wonder has been like in every major black era doing something outlandish. Recently Stevie Wonder got his passport to be a Ghanaian citizen.
Really?
Yeah, so now Ghanaians are claiming, see, nigga, Stevie Wonder is us.
That's dope, Loki.
Stevie Wonder don't know where the hell he is. He could be in Atlanta or Africa. He don't know where the fuck is what's happening.
Wow. I think he can tell he's in Africa by the must.
Wow, you said it. That was
Sorry.
racist, but it's true. Oh wow. Smells different than Georgia here.
No, I don't know Ghana though. I don't know Ghana, so I don't want to like interpret it that way. I just know Kenya and Tanzania, and
Oh
that was
man.
must tea.
Okay. Must see. Continuing before we get canceled by the Africans. Basically, you know, there's during the compilation, during the montage, when the people are like, raising money and awareness for the protests, Rustin is getting his bussy action on by going to the church where Elias is preaching, and then there's split screens of him and Elias making out. And Acti thought that was hot for some reason. I don't know why. She's a sexual
It
deviant.
was. It was two beautiful men making love. It was attractive.
All right, Acti is sexually deviant, and we need to
I,
restrain her.
I'm sorry. How am I sexually deviant? Y'all love to see lesbians kissing. Y'all love to see girl on girl action. Why is it wrong for me to like man on man action? Like two beautiful men are kissing, and for me that's sexy.
Okay, that's wild. I will never kiss a man to turn you on. You can watch that Coleman Domingo clip on GIF loop.
I didn't ask you to kiss a man for me, but
Anyway,
I don't know if that would turn me on. Probably it might.
no, I would not kiss a man for your delight. Moving on, continuing on to Rustin's bussy activities. So basically, Tom comes into his house one day and is like, Rustin, I'm so glad to see you. But he like runs out because, he's going to like meet up with Elias at a gay bar. But Rustin is late to the event and, he sees that the police have raided the gay bath or bar, whatever it was, and a lot of the gay guys are getting arrested. And also the media is out there taking pictures of them. And Elias comes up behind Rustin and he's scared because he showed up late too. And they almost both got busted. And Elias is like, I got too much to lose to be hanging around doing this. And he's all shooken and scared. And he leaves Rustin right there. Any comments on those things?
Um, no, I mean, it was just sad, and we could see sort of like Elias getting scared
Yeah.
of everything that's going on, and he's like, I have a reputation, and you have a movement. Like, should we really risk it all? And
Yeah.
then, like, I think, Rustin says something like, my Ma Rustin always said, like, you should be with people who have the same things to lose as you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
was a cool line, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it was a good line. It was a good line. But moving on, basically, uh Rustin is, moving on past his relationship with Elias, or trying to some degree. But Elias is still trying to get involved in the civil rights movement, and every time he sees Rustin in the daylight, he acts like he's never seen this nigga before. So that keeps on happening, like at the office and stuff. And yeah, Rustin is organizing the police to be a part of the nonviolence movement too, which is something that I thought was very cool. So, moving on, they're like recruiting these black New York City police officers to be peace officers at the March on Washington. And there's this very cool scene when one of the like proto Black Panther young radicals is like yelling in the face of these black cops, like, how many of you pigs killed our black brothers? And one of them almost like swings on them, but then they all march in unison and surround the brother peacefully and stuff like that. I thought that was a very, very cool scene. And so, yeah, Rustin then talks to them and says he's going to get them involved in the movement and that they're going to be there and stuff like that. But there's a scene later when Rustin and Elias are like hanging out at the house, and Elias kisses Rustin, but at the same time, Tom walks in and says, well, 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 what do we have here? And sits down on the armchair and sassily crosses his legs, and Elias runs out. And then Rustin and Tom like have a big back and forth, like, I don't, he basically, Tom says, like, you're an abuser, low key. Like, he says, this is what you do. You have a pattern. Like, you find some young, handsome person with dreams, hopes, and ambitions, and you just twist their minds. And Rustin is sort of like left in shock as Tom drops the mic on him and leaves the room. But anyway, what did you think about that?
Going back to the police scene, I thought that was beautifully shot.
Mm-hmm.
That was like one of the best cinematographies in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and also like, meaning wise, it was also very meaningful as well, because it was sort of saying, even though we're in the police force or we're, rioters, we are still brothers,
Mm-hmm.
and we are still brothers and sisters. So I thought that was very good, very like interesting scene. And also like the fact that they freaking trained the policemen how to do peaceful protests without guns. That was so cool. Like they took the time to do that. So that was, yeah, very cool. And then going back to like the conversation between Elias and Tom, I guess. Yeah, there was like that sort of conversation where Elias was like, oh, white boy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Tom was like, oh, I left my family because they were racist.
Mm-hmm.
And then Elias is like, in our community, you never leave your family.
Mm.
And that was like an interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like what Tom was trying to say to Rustin was that, yeah, like he is toxic and he does that to other people
Mm-hmm.
and other men who, fall in love with him, and he just sort of like plays with them.
Mm-hmm.
But then he finally found someone who he really could give himself to, but that person is not available because that person has a whole wife and a family.
Yeah.
So it's like Tom was telling Rustin, like, what are you doing? Like, don't you see that you play with people who can actually fall for you,
Mm.
but then you fall for someone who's not available to you?
Yeah.
Like, get a hold of yourself and stop this bullshit.
Yeah. I got you. I feel like the my I'm more interested in that love situation between Elias and Rustin, and who kn- I doubt that this love triangle actually happened all at the same time the civil rights march on Washington was happening, right? I believe this relationship was probably created in the screenplay for that Hollywood effect, right? I'm just really not that interested in the Tom and Rustin thing. I don't know. I just feel like Tom is a bratty, needy bottom who constantly needs attention and affection. And meanwhile, Rustin likes the chase of chasing a semi-straight man who's of the cloth of God. And he's like, damn, the temptation is too much. You get what I'm saying? And I
Wow.
think, I think generally you would probably agree that Elias is more of a smash than Tom.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just generally, I think that story could have just been it, honestly. And the Tom situation didn't need to be there. Because there's nothing I really gained from it. Maybe it's true. Bayard and Tom had a relationship and they wanted to put that in there because it's important for his life. But I just wasn't involved in it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they were trying to show Rustin's like love life and more of
Mm-hmm.
like his personal life. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why they included Tom there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was a really like charismatic man.
Yeah.
Like not only when it comes to debating and politics, but also when it comes to like his personal life. Like men wanted to be with him.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what they were trying to portray.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think like the gay aspect of this movie is very like sort of cliche.
Yeah. A little bit cliche. A little bit. And yeah, essentially after that, Bayard sits down with the civil rights leaders. He sits down with Adam Clayton Powell, who's played by Jeffrey Wright. And once again, we didn't know that this was Jeffrey Wright from American Fiction because they put this hairpiece on this man that gives him the perfect half moon Caesar. Like, my God, like they totally transformed this man in pre-production. I think he might have gained a few pounds too, put on a double chin. You get what I'm saying? Some wrinkles
Yeah.
on his face. The FX, the makeup artists in Hollywood are doing really well. Like they could age anybody. Anyway, Adam Clayton Powell is sitting at the table smoking a cigarette, the big fat hog, and he's like, using 14 syllable words to basically say, you niggas are not doing the right thing. Essentially that's what he's saying. But then Rustin says, you know what? Um, I would understand what you're saying, Adam Clayton Powell, about wanting to kick me off of this thing if it were not me, right? And then he asks everybody in his organization to do a roll call of what they've done. And the young people stand up and say, we got 27 buses, 15,000 water tanks, 14 porta potties, whatever, like to talk about how they're prepared for the event. And everybody claps. But then Adam Clayton Powell says, I think I know something about a city called Pasadena. And then Martin Luther King says, Adam, that's enough. And then Adam Clayton Powell says the funniest line in the movie to me. He says, nigga, you might be the head nigga down south. To Martin Luther King. I just love to see the civil rights leader infighting. Like I would love to be in a smoke session with Adam Clayton Powell, A. Philip Randolph, Martin Luther King, and we just roasting each other. Nigga, you got the head of a peanut. Nigga, your mother was the last slave off the plantation to get shoes, nigga. Like I would just love to be there, like roasting each other. Cause I feel like there was so much gold there. Anyway, yeah. Adam Clayton Powell leaves after basically going head to head with Rustin and says, you know what, there's nothing he can do to stop this march from happening. So they defeat the last dragon. Any comments on that scene?
Yeah, I like this scene because
Mm-hmm.
there was also like before that, basically like when Adam Clayton was saying, you know, if you knew that there was a man who would stand in the way of the cause, what would you do, Rustin? And Rustin
Mm-hmm.
says like, I would kick him out. But if that man you're talking about is me, then I would not kick him out. And then like he goes on to make this whole speech with his, you know, helpers about what they accomplished. And all of these people are like, oh, we're charting like 1,000 buses from here. And
Mm-hmm.
we have this much water tanks. We trained the police, and they're saying all the things that they accomplished, which was really
Mm-hmm.
cool, you know, to actually hear those numbers and things that these things actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And, yeah, like, I have to say, like, Jeffrey Wright killed it
Mm-hmm.
in there, and also like the Glenn Turman who was playing Philip Randolph, he killed it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And also like when that happened at that time, Dr. Anna, the feminist
Mm-hmm.
lady who was there, she started like saying, I don't see any women's names in this list, you know, why are we like only letting men lead this movement where we are helping as much. And then she started to get like sissy about it when like sort of she saw that, you know, Adam Clayton was, you know, against certain things and stuff.
Yeah. And
But then like,
that was kind of unresolved because they never said, okay, let's add women to the list. They said, you know what, only leaders of the organizations will speak. And oops, sorry, they just happen to be men. You know what I'm saying? Like there was never, they didn't show like women making speeches or anything like that. You get what I'm saying? They just
yeah,
showed Mahalia Jackson eventually like belting, like lift every voice and sing on the Capitol steps. But go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. No, that was sort of like left there. And I
Hmm.
wish like either they told something to her because they just sort of dismissed her,
Hmm.
or they just didn't put that there at all, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know, because it was like very unresolved, but I like that scene. And then like it once again was sort of like symbolizing that, look, like we all have things that we want to accomplish. We fight for the like same cause, but we also fight for different causes as well, like women's rights or homosexual rights and things like that. But we have to like, you know, stand on business when it comes to the black cause and saving
Yeah.
the race.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what it came
Exactly.
down to. So it was good.
Yeah. So, moving on from that scene, right? Basically, you know, Bayard is sleeping one night and he gets a call from Claudia, the wife of Elias, and she says, it's time for Elias to come home. Thank you for your service. But give my husband back, bitch. That's essentially what she said. Any comments on that? Because I thought that was pretty cool how they did it. Like, you don't see her mouth, you only see her eyes. She's not crying. You know, very 1950s housewife, like, you know, getting her husband back from the hussy. I thought that was very real. Very real.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like she knew that Elias was gay
Mm,
before. And it
mm,
felt like this wasn't the first time Elias went off with some dude.
mm,
So yeah, that's what it felt like to me. And it felt like she sort of like kept on going with it. But now it's like, you know, time for Elias to take over the church. She's like done with this bullshit.
yeah.
And she was
Yeah.
like, yeah, get him back.
Yeah. So later on, you know, Rustin meets up with Elias at a park, and you know, Elias is basically like turning his back on Rustin for good this time. He's like, you know, the flesh is weak, and nobody should succumb to the flesh, for that's what sinners do. He's basically quoting Bible verses, while Rustin is like, "Come on, man, let me suck it one more time," and then Elias like runs away. So yeah, that was it was very sad, you know, because that was a more interesting romance there. There's so many layers to it. And, yeah, it seemed like that really bothered Rustin, you know, that he couldn't sort of reconcile his love for Elias nor Elias for him.
Yeah. I mean, it felt like Elias was hiding something, like either he was followed by FBI, maybe he was threatened by FBI to
Hmm.
like, release this information to out in the open, and that's why like he could not continue this whole thing. Because before this happened, at one point, like Elias came into Rustin's room and said, you know, I'm with you, something
Hmm.
along the lines of that. But then, like, this is how they break up, and also, like, their breakup is very brief.
Hmm.
I wish there was more to it, a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, maybe like, a bigger explanation, or even just maybe if, Elias was threatened by the FBI, maybe they could have
Hmm.
shown a scene of that. Or
Yeah.
something like, or him getting phone calls and things like that. So
Yeah.
it was just very brief, and then nothing
Yeah.
happened after that. So that was kind of like just
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Before we move forward, there was a very important scene that we skipped over, and I can't believe we skipped over it. But they showed a scene of Bayard taking a bus to go somewhere. I forgot exactly where. And then there's a flashback scene of him, sitting on the bus defiantly in the front seat, when black people at the time were forced to sit in the back. And so he's doing this protest. This white woman sitting next to him with a baby tells her baby, "Don't look at that nigger." And then the police get on the bus and they, beat up Rustin and like beat him up in front of all the white people on the bus and stuff like that. And that shows how he got his tooth knocked out. Any comments about that scene?
Yeah, I think he was going to see MLK,
Mm,
but that was definitely like, a moving scene, and also
hmm.
like still showed that he was so strong with his pacifism, because
Yeah.
as the police grabbed him, he said something along the lines of like, if I get up right now and go to the back, then these children won't know that there's an injustice here.
Yeah.
And like he's thinking about the children who her mother said, don't look at that N word, right?
Mm,
So it's like he is so like, you know, thinking so big, so
hmm.
like the bigger picture, that he
Yeah.
doesn't even care about the racist mom. And
Yeah.
he's just like standing on business. And then as he's being grabbed, he's saying like, I'm not doing anything. I'm not like, defying you or anything like
Hmm.
that. I'm just sitting.
Yeah.
And then they kick him out and stuff like that, which goes to
Yeah.
show like just really how much of bravery you have to be a pacifist.
Exactly. And I thought that scene was also important too because when we think about somebody sitting in the front of the bus, who do we automatically think of?
I mean, I don't think of anyone, but
Oh, come
y'all are
on. Rosa
Americans.
Parks. Rosa Parks. Come
Oh,
on.
okay, okay. I thought you meant like something else.
No, when we automatically think of somebody sitting on the bus for civil rights, it's Rosa Parks
Yeah.
automatically. But that was actually something that a lot of people did. I think like somebody told me at least one time, at least like 10 niggas a year got beat up for doing that shit. Like since like the end of slavery, like there was always that one guy in the town who was like, "Hey, bro, I'm gonna sit on the front of the bus. I don't care what them crackers say to me."
I
But
mean, yeah, that's protest.
right, right. So that's been happening, but it was good to show like, yeah, in the civil rights movement, a lot of the actions we think were done by one person was actually done many a times by many other people working behind the scenes who are not famous, which I think is the overall theme of this film, right? Behind every great man is a fabulous gay man,
Wow.
right?
I have a question.
Tell
Every
me.
time you're on the bus, do you think about Rosa Parks?
Hell yeah. And that's why I sit my ass on the back because I don't want no trouble now.
Wow. You should sit in the front. I mean, not that it's, a thing right now, but
I should sit so far in the front. I should drive a bus, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
what? No.
Niggas should be driving buses now, huh? Is that what you're trying to imply?
Okay, Simon, chill.
I'm just playing. But yeah, I like that scene. And that leads us up to another flashback scene. So basically, as the march gets closer and closer to the dates of happening, the right wing racists are spreading more propaganda about, you know, Rustin, right? And so Rustin comes into the office and basically the news is announcing that Rustin was a communist and a homosexual who was arrested in Pasadena, California a few years ago for getting caught in a car sucking off two white boys. And he got beat up by the police and arrested, right? And, when he hears this on the radio, he tries to tell the people, pack peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, not cheese sandwiches, PB&J. It's lovely. And then he starts busting out in sweats. So then he runs to the subway in a very funny scene, right? And he's sweating on the subway. He shows up at the NAACP offices and all the niggas are like crowded around in the huddle like, man, this nigga Rustin, bro. Then he bursts into the room and everybody's silent. And so then Martin Luther King and Rustin like go in the back and, Rustin is like, all my life I had to fight. Essentially, he gives an all my life I had to fight speech, about how, being black and gay, you have to always try to be better than and hide than and be super perfect, not to, cross the lines or offend the dominant society and stuff like that. And then Martin says, I got you, bruh. And the next day, Martin goes on TV and says, Rustin's the coolest bruh I know. He's a good man. Y'all chill. He's got a good heart. We gonna march on Washington. See y'all later. Gang, gang. And
Why'd you
that's
turn them into broskies?
it. Anyway, what did you think of those scenes?
Okay, so yeah, like the rumor, I guess it's not a rumor, but like just yeah, like what happened in Pasadena and then the way they release it. I don't know if that was Adam Clayton.
You think
Maybe
so?
I don't know because why was he like throwing threats like that and then like the next day they released it?
Mm-hmm.
Because he was saying Pasadena, Pasadena, and then like
Yeah.
did he give that information to FBI?
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly. So like I was thinking about that and then obviously like it was just sad because Bayard was so dedicated to the
Mm-hmm.
cause.
Yeah.
And everyone around him, like all the young workers around him, they were also like really sad about him as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I like that speech that he gave, like all my life I have to fight speech.
Yeah.
He said something like, the day I was born black, I was also born gay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not something that like I have to justify constantly,
Yeah.
my existence. And when Martin Luther gave his speech, I cried like about his friend because Rustin was crying and because like I think that's when he truly forgave Martin.
Mm.
And he was just like, that was the first time like he just really felt like the friendship and felt like all of his efforts were appreciated by Martin
Oh, you
after
gonna make
like
me cry. Don't make me cry now.
because no because of Martin, let's be honest, he was sort of like made to look like a traitor to the
Mm-hmm.
cause when all he
Mm-hmm.
did was fight for the cause.
Mm-hmm.
And finally like that being appreciated by his friend I think meant the world to him.
Yeah.
And I once again like I'm tearing up talking about it because I'm also watching it on the screen again. But like Coleman Domingo was perfect. Like, the way he cried and portrayed that emotion, I felt that. That was
Yeah.
like just such a emotional thing. And I could have like kept on crying for a good 15 minutes, but I didn't want to like miss the movie. So for me, that was like super emotional.
I'm glad that the film could get you that emotionally connected to the story, where a scene where I think, most people wouldn't cry, you did, right? Which I think goes to show the strength in this movie. If you're watching it and paying attention to it and following the story, that scene can move you to tears, right? Because yeah, there
Hmm.
was that rift between Rustin and MLK that was never solved until MLK said, I'm gonna stand up for you even though you're gay. And on top of that, Elias was a preacher but turned his back on Rustin. But MLK was an even more public, famous preacher defending a homosexual, right? Which I
Yeah.
think goes to show Elias's cowardice to some degree and Martin Luther King's bravery.
Yeah, definitely. And like also Martin took on like the risk of having rumors with him and Rustin,
Yeah,
because that was the first threat that came
right,
up to him like years ago.
right.
And I don't know, like I just found it emotional because I really care about my friendships. And I know what it feels like to be appreciated by your friends. So I think that's just so important in life, and it just gives you such a power that I think no one can give to you.
Exactly.
Like, not your lover, not your mom, not your family. It's just something else.
Yeah.
So I think I just felt that, and that's why I cried, because of like that friendship bond that they had.
Yeah.
I miss my friends. Can you tell?
Yes, I can. Okay. Don't worry. You can see them. Anyway, I think Martin Luther King also went out there and defended Rustin's homosexuality because he was very secure in his heterosexuality. He was about to say, any rumors about me and Rustin are not true. You guys know I like big booty pogs. The bigger the pog, the bigger the booty. And this is what I have a dream about. I dream
Simon
of
sucks.
snow bunnies in winter and Latinas in the fall.
Please stop.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But yeah, basically the movie ends after that. It's actually kind of anticlimactic. They have the big March on Washington. Happy young Negro men are singing Negro spirituals. People show up to the March on Washington and they're, singing and holding up picket signs and protesting and stuff like that. Mahalia Jackson, does a song. And then Martin Luther King does like the last 2 seconds of the I Have a Dream speech where he says, free at last, thank God Almighty, we're free at last. And then everybody claps. Martin Luther King and Rustin like stare at each other over the shoulder and stuff like that while the audience goes wild. And, the leaders, the Negro boule, the bourgeois Negroes who hated Rustin at the beginning said, hey, Rustin, we gonna meet the president now. You want to come? And Rustin's like, I cannot stop, the service that I have to do. And so then he goes instead to pick up trash. And Chris Rock and the other magical Negroes run off to the white man's big house. And, then the movie ends. That's it. And then they show pictures of like the real March on Washington and the Lenny Kravitz song Freedom belts into the air, which is actually a good song. I like that song.
Yeah.
But, what did you think of the ending?
Oh, yeah, the ending, unfortunately, was the worst part of the movie because it was underwhelming. Yeah, like, put 10 minutes of the speech and make the movie fucking 10 minutes longer. Like, why? I don't know, because for me, like, as someone who is not American, right, I know the speech, obviously, but I know the speech from, like, I Have a Dream part. And I'm like, was this the speech? Like, I was confused, and I wish that they just included more parts of the speech. And also, like when they were showing the whole, Washington Park, I'm sure they used like some of the older footage with the new like footage from the movie. And I wish they did the same thing with Martin's speech as well. Like they just mixed it up with the acting and then the actual footage of him speaking. That would have been so cool, I think, and it would have just made it such a more like exhilarating experience. To once again be reminded that this actually happened and it was really like powerful.
I just wish that they made the I Have a Dream speech, but like avant-garde, twisted, satirical, comical. I really wish Martin Luther King said, I'm going to solve racism right now. And after this, we will be done to smash all the pogs we want. I have a dream that one day little black boys and little black girls will play on the hills of big booty pogs in Georgia.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there. Mute yourself. No. No.
You're the co-host. I think you could mute me if you really wanted to.
I'm about to if you keep on going with the POG speech.
I'm just saying, I wish we treat the I Have a Dream speech like the joke it is now. Not because Martin Luther King is a joke. It's because the white supremacists, the racists, the people who really don't care about civil rights have made it into a joke. They just quote the part where he says, I hope one day people will see people for the content of their character and not the color of their skin. That's all they ever heard Martin Luther King say. So now I just wish we just trashed the I Have a Dream speech and just make Martin Luther King, like whenever they play it in high school, just make fart noises come out of Martin Luther King's mouth.
Wow, no, Simon.
Yes.
No.
Because there's no point to it now. There's
Yes, there
no,
is. Why are you like taking the bite that white supremacists are handing it to you?
they're
Like,
not.
no, Martin Luther King fought for that, and there has been so many things that led up to that moment. And why would you like now trash that speech that meant so much to so many people at that time? It
I'm a
doesn't make
quote.
sense.
I'm gonna quote Malcolm X. Malcolm X was alive during the time when the "I Have a Dream" speech happened, and he wrote an article. And guess what he called it? The farce on Washington, not the march on Washington. The fallacy, the lie, the big trick, bamboozle. Because what the black radicals at that time were saying is kind of like what we're saying now. The nonviolence movement and the fight to get, segregation eliminated was ultimately going to lead to white people co-opting the movement, adopting it for their own purposes and reasons, and still not actually realizing anything towards black liberation. It's just pacification to some degree. And what I think has happened to the "I Have a Dream" speech is that it's lost all meaning in the sense that we don't think about everything else Martin Luther King said about, getting reparations, ending the military industrial complex, guaranteed housing, guaranteed jobs, guaranteed universal basic income. All white people remember and the dominant society remembers is this big fat puffy black man that sixth grade teachers want to hump on. And saying that one day we will all get past the idea of worrying about each other's skin color. And since then, white people have been colorblind. They can't see any other color except green on money. So fuck the "I Have a Dream" speech. That's the point where I'm at. So I wish in every film now we just make it blah, 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 blah whenever Martin Luther King talks. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, but I just think it's unfair. If that's the part that you want to hear, if you want to, make a point that everything else MLK said was so much more like powerful, then make that point instead of just like disrespecting that part. I feel like, yeah, maybe that part made it, you know, it's sort of like that part reached the white people and they took that and used it for themselves. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
can understand that. But like, what is the other solution? Like, I understand why, Malcolm X was fighting and stuff, but like, what are you gonna do? Are you just gonna like fight till death with white people?
No, no, it's not fighting till death till white people, but it's actually reminding ourselves and also reminding them what the actual purpose is. It's not to create a colorblind society. It's a society where our blackness is not so offensive to your sensibilities that you kill us, maim us, hurt our children, prevent us from having economic opportunities, living where we want, being who we want to be, what we put in our hair. Because the same white people who say, I don't see color, are the same white people who said, hey, remember that young black boy in high school who had dreadlocks and he was following all the rules? He can't come to school because he has dreadlocks that go past his shoulders. So let's not let him get a high school education. But let's also remember Martin Luther King's words. So I don't see color anymore. I haven't seen color since 1965. These are the same white supremacists we're dealing with. And that's why I'm saying, like, the words don't mean anything now. Because Martin Luther King's life meant something. His writing meant something. His activism meant something. But that speech needs to be in the trash because it's been, it's been shit upon by the white supremacists so much who literally do not care about black life. So they just use that now as a weapon. And when something is used against us, there's no point of us using it anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think Bayard was also saying the same thing and had the same thoughts, but he just had a different way of doing things. And I think Martin Luther King was thinking the same thing. It's not his fault, or it's none of their fault that white people took that speech and used it to their advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is like, why would you take that bait?
I
It's
would
like
say
the
something.
N word. You
No, but
took the N word as black people and made it your own and made it like an iconic word that's used in music and
and
art and
and that white
everything.
people can't say.
Yeah, and white people can't say it. So why not have the same mentality when it comes to Martin Luther King's speech?
Because what we did with the N word is what white people did to the Martin Luther King speech. They've made it to the point that it's now useless.
No.
The same way we killed the N-word to some degree, we've made it so that every white person is on edge whenever they say any word that starts with the letter N, right? We feel weird as hell when white people start quoting Martin Luther King, and the only thing they can think of is, I dream of a day where nobody will see color. Like that's all they know. That's all they know about this man's life. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And that's the frustrating part. I want you to imagine, like, I know it's different in your country, but imagine, your guy, Erdogan, instead of like dismissing Ataturk's legacy, he co-opted Ataturk's legacy and said everything he is doing is now in the vein and the ideas and ethos of what Ataturk wanted, right? And so, imagine he bastardized and twisted it so much that it almost becomes disgusting and unrecognizable. Not that you dislike Ataturk or hate Ataturk, but now because the legacy has been twisted and changed, it becomes useless and purposeless for your goals on what you want to see for your country. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like I understand why you're upset and why you want to like sort of reject that speech. I understand like where you're coming from, but it's just that for me, I don't think that's the approach that you should take. That's it. So we can agree to disagree.
I get what you're saying. I just feel like if we continue quoting it or looking at it as something necessary or important, then that validates even the white supremacist point. Because they're saying, see, your guy said this and you agree with it. We just need to get rid of it because there's a lot of other stuff that our guy said that they don't even know about or don't care to learn or purposely ignore that needs to be focused on more. Martin
Yeah,
Luther,
that's what I'm saying. Like then you should make the focus other parts of that speech and not that.
hey, but guess what the white supremacists do when we do say it? When we do quote other Martin Luther, guess what they do? La 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 la. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Blah 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 blah. Ah, la la la.
Well,
They
they're
put
going to do the same thing with anything or anyone's speech.
right. I get what you're saying. I get what you're
I
saying.
mean, they're white supremacists. Like that's what they're here for on earth. To like shit on black people and everyone who is not white.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But if I was directing this film, I would have made it like, I don't know, Martin Luther King got up there and started like just shaking his dick in front of the crowd, in front of people,
Wow. I
right? While
mean,
talking about reparations. That would have been great.
I just like went back to that scene where, Rustin is about to quit his job and
Hmm.
when his boss is accusing him of being racist
Uh-huh.
towards the white guy, he says like, you said, it's between him and God if he's white, but I
Right.
can't surrender my differences. And he says like, I cannot even if I wanted to because the world won't let me.
Right.
So I just think like Rustin and Martin had the same thought in terms of
Hmm.
that when it comes to like, color and racism.
Right. Right. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. And that's generally what I agree with Rustin. I agree with Martin Luther King. Like all the speeches that they made in this film and also the things that they wrote about outside of this film, I agree with them. I just feel like, some things have become so diluted, it's polluted, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah.
But overall, I enjoyed this film. It was educational for me, even as somebody who feels like I know a lot about this time and era. I still learned a whole lot about this time and era, more than I care to admit, right? I'm actually kind of ashamed I didn't know a lot of this stuff, right? And yeah, I think what the strength of this film is that unlike the Marley movie, which is a movie we reviewed like 30 episodes ago, Bob Marley has such a big life that we trashed that movie because it didn't live up to expectations, right? Marley lived such a huge, gigantic life. It should have been broken down into a series. But Rustin, unfortunately, he might have lived a big life, but his fame is very small. So a 90-minute movie about who he was is good enough and satisfactory enough to let us learn about him, appreciate him, understand his struggles, and also entertain us. So generally, I'll give this film like an 8.5. There are some like things that are left unsaid or unresolved, like the kids being mad about the march being one day, or the women not having a voice on the March on Washington and stuff like that. And maybe some like cheesy Netflix green screen at the U.S. Capitol. But overall, 8.5, generally good movie. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. Because, like you said, because this character in real life is not so popular, not a lot of people know about Rustin. I guess last night you said, like, this is a good introduction to
Mhm.
introduce him to the world. And I
Mhm.
definitely agree with that. And for me, I'll give it a 9, like the same score when we finished it last night, because for me, it made me emotional. It made me excited at times. And, I really like the acting from Coleman Domingo, from Chris Rock, from Jeffrey Wright, from everyone in the cast, really.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it is maybe like cheesy Netflix biopic, but I'm okay with that
Mhm.
when it comes to this story, at least. And I felt like, yeah, like you said, it was more educational than like
Mhm.
a cinematography,
Mhm.
film.
Yeah.
Because I appreciated this movie of the stuff that it taught me, and not because, oh, like that shot was beautiful, that this shot was beautiful.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
thing that's missing for me, the one point, is like the ending. And I
Really.
just wish they would have like driven that home.
Yeah.
Just make it more glorious and just like more passionate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing like that killed it for me. But other than that, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I think this movie is worthy. I'm glad it got made. And before we wrap this up, I want to list off all of the awards this movie won, because this movie is actually getting a lot of recognition, which it does deserve. So yeah, the movie won the Next Big Thing award at the Queerties. It won that at the Shurzum Award. It won the Shurzum Award at the Hamptons International Film Festival. It won the Audience Choice Award for Narrative Special Presentation at the Heartland International Film Festival. The director, George C. Wolfe, won an award for directing at the Mill Valley Film Festival. It also won an award at the Gold Q Hugo. It won the Gold Q Hugo Award at the Chicago International Film Festival, and also won at the Philadelphia Film Festival for Audience Award Narrative Feature. My guy Coleman Domingo won Best Actor Award at the Celebration in Cinema and Television Awards. He also won the Washington, D.C. Area Film Critics Association Awards for Best Actor as well. At the Dallas Fort Worth Film Critics Association, he got fifth place Best Actor. He got Best Actor at the Capri Hollywood International Film Festival. Wow. Okay. Spotlight Actor Award at the Palm Springs International Film Festival for Coleman Domingo. Okay. He also got the African American Film Critics Association Award for Best Actor this year. Shout out Coleman Domingo, racking him up.
Wow.
He got Best Actor at the AARP Movies for Grown-Ups Award. Okay. Movies you fell asleep to and then saw the ending on the couch. Okay. Anyway, he got outstanding. This film got outstanding film streaming or TV at the GLAD. I think that's the Gay Lesbian American Alliance Defense League or something like that. So yeah, it's like a queer film. A lot of the queer, associations are awarding this film. And finally, in March of this year, the NAACP, the same organization that kicked out Bayard Rustin, gave this film Outstanding Actor in a Motion Picture Award to Coleman Domingo for playing Bayard Rustin. Think about that. That's deep.
Mm, okay.
So, yeah, any comments?
I mean, I think Coleman Domingo deserves every award in this movie. That was definitely like well earned. And,
Mhm.
I'm happy like that the movie got so many awards. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have a trivia then.
Tell me.
So yeah, one of the producing partners for this movie is Higher Ground Productions, the banner under which former President Barack and former First Lady Michelle Obama have produced several Netflix projects.
Yeah.
While Obama was president of the United States, he posthumously awarded Bayard Rustin the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the
Mm,
nation's highest civilian honor. And at
mm.
November 2013 White House ceremony, President Obama presented Rustin's awards to Walter Nagley, Rustin's surviving longtime romantic partner.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, so basically, I guess this movie was supported by the Obamas.
That's cool. That's cool. That's a beautiful thing. And this is an educational film. Show it to your kids. Show it to your, show it to everybody, man. Check out Rustin. It's worthy of a watch. Multiple watches too. You know, this is a movie that's going to become a hood classic. We're going to make this a hood classic for real.
Yeah. Also, I guess another trivia is that fellow civil rights leader Julian Bond often quoted Bayard Rustin as joking that Martin Luther King couldn't organize vampires to go to a bloodbath, meaning that despite King's enormous gifts as a leader and an orator, King needed Rustin's and others' help with organizational aspects of the movement.
Wow, wow. That's that shows how important, movement building is,
Yeah.
And while a lot of the credit goes to one guy, deservedly so, because Martin Luther King is a hero, it couldn't be done without the Bayard Rustins, the A. Philip Randolphs, the Roy Wilkins, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a hard thing to accomplish, especially at that time, especially being black and being gay,
Yeah, definitely.
Crazy what he did.
Yeah. But all right, this has been episode 72 of Simon and Acting Movie Reviews. If you have any requests, put them in the comments. Holla at us next time, and y'all be easy out there. Bye.